So part one of my birth story, and I've got the baby still with me, still dozing, still kind of like crying out a little bit. So she might do that some, but I think she's going to sleep for at least another 20 minutes. So, yes, I've explained in other videos like why I wanted a home birth, why I didn't want to be in the hospital, kind of the process I took to educate myself throughout pregnancy. Because I really, just by nature, I don't like to make big decisions without attempting to educate myself as much as possible. I'm a planner. I like to know the different scenarios, and then I like to kind of have the opportunity to think through, if at all possible, what choices would I make within those scenarios for a positive, desirable outcome? And when things don't go well, how will I orient my thought process and my reactions for the best possible outcome? And you can't plan everything. You can't know everything. No one can. And that's why I think ultimately, especially, as a Christian, and as someone who values making these decisions with Christ and unto Christ, at the end of the day, the Bible says, many are the plans of a man's heart, but the Lord establishes his steps. So we can plan and plan, and God is the one who makes it happen, and God is the one who directs our course. So while I do believe it is honoring to the Lord to make our plans, I do believe that we have a stewardship and a responsibility within that process. I also believe that God challenges us, especially if this is a gifting. Like for me, it is one of my giftings. And God challenges me in light of my gifting and in light of my nature and my natural propensity to hold these things with an open hand and say, okay, God, I've done my part. I have done my research. I have made my plans. I've thought through it. I have weighed these choices against my value system. I am confident within my opinion. I have articulated my desires. And now I hold these things before you as an act of worship, acknowledging that you are God and that you're sovereign, and that if you direct my steps in a different direction, I will honor you with the state of my heart and with the response of my heart. Now, that doesn't always mean that our emotions are going to react in the most honoring way. And I think God knows that. And I think that there is grace for that. And grace is the empowerment to do what we cannot do on our own. I think that there's a grace for our heart to catch up. And I think that there is a mercy from the Lord when something doesn't go the way that we want, for us to have room to grieve, and for us to have room to be angry, and for us to have room to be afraid even. I don't think fear is necessarily something that God considers a sin, in that I think fear is a very natural reaction. And I think that our responsibility in light of fear is to acknowledge the fear and then to bring it to the Lord and say, God, I am afraid right now, or I am intimidated, or I am, very nervous. I give this to you. I'm going to trust that I will see your goodness throughout the process. And I think that that's where we master our fear and where we learn to overcome it. So that it's important to me that people understand my heart going into this birth and throughout the process, because I did not make these choices lightly. I did not make these choices ignorantly. I spent a significant amount of time researching my options and understanding the consequences, and I say that in a positive and negative way, like I spent a lot of time trying to understand the outcomes of the decisions I would make within this process in a variety of settings. And as a result of doing all of that research and really learning as much as I could, I was very informed throughout the process. In the moment, I was able to make quick decisions. I already knew as much as I needed to know about the decisions I was making. Like, for example, especially when we were at the hospital, I didn't need people to explain to me the difference between a spinal block and an epidural because I had already researched all of that and I knew which one I wanted. I didn't need someone to explain to me, what does Pitocin do? What is the purpose of an epidural? I didn't need people to explain to me the significance of, hey, it really is time to have a C-section, because by all of this, at each moment within the process, I knew where we were. I knew what my options had been up to those points, and I knew I had done everything I could. So that brought so much peace to my heart as I was having to accept the changes to the plan, as I was having to release my desires, and as I was having to make decisions for a healthy and safe outcome, which is what I had to do. So having said that, I will go ahead and start the story, and I'll probably break it up again just because it will be long. Sorry. I can't tell a story short-winded. I mean, I need to practice that, but I started labor here at the house. I was vacuuming. My big goal was to finish vacuuming the living room. And when I say vacuuming the living room, I do this about every, 3 months, and I had been saving this chore as close to birth as possible because I knew I wanted it done and I knew I didn't want to have to do it again. So what I do about every 3 months or so is I pull all of the furniture into the center of the room. I vacuum all the dog hair. I collect all the dog toys that have ended up like stranded underneath the couch. And then I take all the cushions off the couch. I vacuum that, the pillows, everything. And I vacuum my furniture every week. Because we have dogs, we let them on the couch. We have a cat. So, it has to be vacuumed every week anyway, but to like really go crazy and like undo all the curtains and the cushions and wash, the blankets and all that, I do it maybe once every 2 or 3 months whenever we need it. And we just came out of winter, so they've been shedding, and I just had this hope that my house would be very clean when I go into labor, because I don't want to be, and I've never done this, I don't know how it is. So I was just like, I don't want to be like walking around the house barefoot, having contractions, and then have like a bunch of hair stuck to the bottom of my foot. And, we're having our midwife come over, we're having the doula, the assistants, everyone's coming. So I was kind of like, I want my house to be in as presentable of a state as possible. So I knew the whole time when I start labor, and I had a plan that I kept in Google as a recurring appointment, and it had like a task list of, when you start labor, do these things, so that I wouldn't forget anything. And it was like, hey, when you start labor, when you start your contractions, go ahead and vacuum all the floors, feed the dogs, make sure everyone has water. I think I had a grocery list in case we needed like last minute groceries. These are the groceries I'd like to have like in the house. Because I didn't know when I would start labor, and, we tend to kind of do our groceries where we eat everything and then like we empty the fridge and we have little on the pantry shelves, and then we go get more groceries. So I figured, okay, if I start labor and I've got like 2 things in the refrigerator, it'd be nice to like, hey, Brandon, I'm having contractions. Can you just run to the grocery store and get these 10 things so that for the next 3 days or so, we will have some easy to eat fresh food. because I was just like, I do not want to be caught in labor without a nice snack. And so I have these lists, and I started my contractions, and I didn't fully, I had pre-labor, and they were the same kind of contractions. Everyone's like, no, that must be Braxton Hicks. No, it was the same as the contractions or the pre-labor symptoms that I had had for the last like 3 or 4 months during pregnancy. So it was not unlike anything I had not experienced. And so I start these contractions, but what was different was I was noticing it was more rhythmic and it had more of a pattern. So I explained what a contraction was in a different video, but it's the squeezing of a muscle. And as I was having these, I was noticing, okay, this is happening like every 3 to 5 minutes or so. And so I put on my 90s country. I love 90s country. I'm getting pepped up and I'm like, all right, like I didn't think it was labor. I just thought like, all right, like this is getting serious. Like I must be, having another round of pre-labor. I'm just going to do everything I can to keep going. So I'm like vacuuming for 2 or 3 minutes, and then I'm like hunched over on the couch for another minute or two. And I texted my doula after maybe 3 or 4 hours of this. And keep in mind, this is a living room. Like this whole task when I'm not pregnant might take me 30 or 40 minutes total. Maybe an hour tops if I'm really going crazy. And I had been on this chore for like 3.5 hours by this point. And so I knew I was going slower, but I wasn't keeping a firm eye on the clock. And that was kind of a blessing. Like I didn't want to know what time it was. But I texted my doula and I said, hey, I think I am having contractions. I think they're about 2 or 3 minutes apart. And they seem to be about a minute long a piece. What should I do? And she said, did you download that app that I told you about like 2 months ago? And I was like, oh yeah, I'll get it. So I get the app, I'm timing the contractions. She can view it from her phone. And finally, I just gave up on the vacuuming. And that's whenever I knew, I think that this is getting pretty serious, because I thought, all right, I'm going to put my vacuum up, and I wasn't even done. Like I still had one couch to vacuum. And so that was when I thought this is really serious, because I'm not even really willing to finish this chore anymore. And I came into our shower, and the way that it's set up, in fact, I could even show you. The way that it is set up, you can see I have a chair in the shower, and I've got a double head. So one is like a wand and one is a fixed head. And throughout my whole pregnancy, after I got big, I like to sit in that chair and I would light my candles. I have battery operated candles in there, and they're tucked away from where the water flows. And I would just sit there forever and enjoy the water and, use the wand to like relax and get my back and everything. And oh my gosh, it was just wonderful. And I kept the chair in there because I still enjoy doing it. But when I was pregnant, I was just too big to be on my feet all the time. I couldn't take a long shower, so I sat. And so I'm in there for, to me, it felt like 30 minutes, but it must have been a few hours, because by the time I pop my head out, Brandon's in bed, and I had a little moment where I was like, you're a terrible husband. Like, you're not supporting me. I feel abandoned. I feel like you're not doing anything. And Brandon's over here in bed with our Red Bradley book out. And he was like, Courtney, I am reading what to expect from this labor. I'm reviewing all of our homework from the class that we took. So I was like, oh, I'm sorry. You really are doing a great job. So he's like on the phone with the midwife. And I can't be certain, but I think that this is about the time I went through transition. And I'm pretty sure it was around 2 or 3 a.m. by this point. And keep in mind, to me, there is no time. Like, I thought I was in there for 30 minutes, but little did I know it's like the middle of the night. And I'm doing my breathing, I'm doing my meditation, I'm listening to my ASMR videos, Graham Cook, listening to my hypnobirthing tracks, and I have it all on a playlist, so it just runs continuously. And I have like, I don't know, maybe 40 videos in this YouTube playlist. And so I'm doing all that, doing my breathing, and it wasn't bad. Like, I mean, it was hard in the sense that the biggest thing about labor is you've got to keep your focus. You've got to keep your mind in that, focused, intent. Like, I'm just going to focus on breathing. I'm going to focus on relaxing my jaw. I'm going to focus on keeping my shoulders relaxed. Here comes another contraction. I'm going to breathe through it. Like, I'm going to let the waves of the contraction come and go and then not fight it. I'm not going to tense up. And that's kind of the thought that I was having the whole time. Like, I was made for this. My body was made for this. I am excelling, like, and just reminding myself of truth and of the different comforting thoughts that I had, while I was preparing. So our doula decides to go ahead and come, and I think she got here maybe around 4 a.m. And that is something I really don't remember. I remember feeling very comforted when she showed up. I remember feeling excited because that was the moment where I thought, okay, everyone is acknowledging that this is labor. But I think I had already been through transition, man. I can't be completely sure. I just know that, like, it got rough for a little bit. And rough, not painful. Rough as in, like, this sense of not knowing how much time was passing, and the contractions happening every like 30 seconds, like 20 seconds. And that's the thing, is to keep the mindset and to remind myself to relax. And I keep pointing to my jaw because that was the big tip that we learned in our class, is you want to keep your jaw loose. Relaxing the other muscles in my body, like, to keep reminding yourself to do that, and to be faced with the temptation to kind of seize up or clinch up every 30 seconds, like, that does require an endurance. And it's not comfortable. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it's not comfortable. It's hard, but I say that in the sense that, like, climbing a mountain isn't comfortable. It's not easy. As you're climbing, you are going to have moments where you're like, I don't know if I can make it to the top. I'm tired. My whole body is in a state of discomfort. I'm getting fatigued. I do not want to continue. So there were moments like that for sure. But then you get to the top of the mountain and you're like, I could do that again. So that's how birth was for me. And the doula got here. It seemed like maybe 2 or 3 hours later. My backup midwife came because my midwife was already on another birth. And I am going to pause the video here and then continue it, just so that we don't get too long for a part 2.